A very good evening, everybody. In that, you have to mute the mic. Now I've muted. I've muted now. Okay, fine. Yes. Okay. So, rather good afternoon. This is the evening session of the fourth day of our presentations, and we are having this season from 11th to 15th of March. And today, in this evening session, we have presentations on literary theory and criticism, Indian and Western poetics. Let us have a list of the students who are going to read the presentations and their topics also. Let me share the screen. Okay, so we'll start with, let me share screen. Okay, we'll start with Hina's presentation on Dhvani theory in Indian aesthetics, followed by Hetal's on use of figurative language in Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. You have to, again, in title, language, L should be capital. And space also is very important. Inverted comma, no space, the. There is an unnecessary space in between. We have done several this Mentimeter activities where we have seen that even a space is a wrong answer. So you have to be very careful about an empty space also. In title, you have to be very careful. Gopi on Alamkara theory in Indian aesthetics. Ghanshyam will present on persona and shadow. Archetypes, still the title is not appropriate. Persona and shadow in the archetypes or archetypes of persona and shadow. Gayatri, the cyclical pattern of the four mythos of Northrop Frye. Drashti will read on the elements of archetypes in Harry Potter. There is no need to capitalize of and in. This letters is better they remain unless there is some stress on of. But it is not. It is just a simple preposition. So no need to capitalize of and in. Bhavyata will present on applying Rasa theory on the movie Kabhi Khushi, Kabhi Gham. Okay. So this again title needs to be rectified properly. In the morning we were doing this, that you ask this title to ChatGPT and ask reframe the title and see are you getting a better suggestions for the title or not. Avani will read on Rasa theory in Shakespearean tragedies. Anjali on two uses of language in I.A. Richards' criticism. I.A. Richards' practical criticism, that is the name of the work, so that you can put practical criticism in single inverted comma. Uses, U capital. Two uses of language, U should be capital. Arti on Vakrokti Siddhant by Kuntak. Okay, so let us start our presentation. Yes, you can. Hina will start with the first presentation.
Very good afternoon to all. This is our fourth day of our presentation, and I'm going to give my presentation on a topic Dhvani theory in Indian aesthetics. These are my personal information. Those are some points which I am going through in my presentation. First, introduction, then meaning of Dhvani theory of Anandvardhan, Dhvani theory in Indian poetics, Shabda and Artha, response upon Dhvani theory from ChatGPT, then conclusion and then citation. So, I would like to start my presentation with introduction of Indian aesthetics. India before the coming of Muslims is full of surprises, and none is more surprising than that authorities do not agree as to the role or even the existence of art in India. In Troy Organ's article, Indian Aesthetics, Its Technique and Assumptions, Heinrich Zimmer begins his book, The Art of the Indian Asia, with this confident statement that Indian art, beside documentary the history of a majestic civilization, opens a comparatively simple, delightful way into the timeless domain of the Hindu spirit. For it, readers in eloquent visual forms the whole message that India holds in keep for mankind. Then, what is the meaning of Dhvani? So, the Dhvani is a word in Sanskrit whose primarily meaning is sound. It may articulate human speech or articulate animal cries. It may also be noise, melodies, or jarring pros- uh, produced by musical instruments or weaving machinery. It is a far cry for the literal meaning of Dhvani. To its profound connection as the core essence or soul of poetry. In music, we have tone, time, timbre, and resonance associate with sweet sounding notes. Then Anandvardhan. Anandvardhan belongs to the 9th century. Before that, there were many Alamkarics who focus on Shabda and Artha and lingers around the word and its meaning. Because poetry is defined as Shabda Artha Sahito Kavyam. Poem is the a combination of Shabda and Artha. Earlier poetics like Bhamaha, Dhandin, and Vaman, all those people concentrated on the Shabda and Artha, which is the body of the poem, and that is causing beauty to the poem. He developed a new theory and pointed out that words of great poets continue to resonate in our hearts and give numerous meanings as one reflects on it. So, in poetry, the Shabda and Arthas are more important because for that poetry define beautiful and readers like to read it. Dhvani theory in Indian aesthetics. Dhvani is a suggested sense the most significant part of the poetry. To know what is this Dhvani, one should understand the function of the word and go through the Dhvanyaloka. Grammarians and Alankarikas, they mention there are three such functions of the word: Abhidha, Lakshana, and Vyanjana. So first one is Abhidha. There is a function of the word which signifies or denotes it is a primarily sense like this is Mukesh and this is red color. So it's a direct meaning, and the second is lakshana. The function of the lakshana is to indicate, and when the primarily sense is abstracted, the word conveys a sense other than the primarily sense but related to it. And the third is Vyanjana. The meaning of this Vyanjana of the word is not limited to its primarily sense, but much more than that, it has the power to reach beyond the obvious. And abhita is a function which gives a direct meaning. The word is called vachaka, and the meaning is vachartha. Lakshana is the function, it gives secondary sense, and lachaka is the word, and lachartha is the meaning. Then third is Vyanjana, and this Vyanjana is a suggestion, and Vyanjarka is a word, and Vyanjartha is its meaning. There was much debate under suggestive meaning, thought not implicit, far more beautiful and sensitive because the object of awareness is regarded as the essence of poetry. The Dhvani theory of Anandvardhan focus on the potential of suggestive sense in poetry. Shabda with its Vachakta form the body of Kavya, but the essence of Ras can be perceived only through suggestion. Then Shabda and Artha. This is Shabda and Artha is important in the poetry. Shabda and Artha, the word and the meaning, they are the body of Kavya, like how human beings have the body and the inner soul is there. That inner soul he considered as it as Dhvani. Dhvanyaloka is divided into four chapters. They are called um, uh, Ujjota. And that way, the whole text is written in three parts. The first is Karika, then the second is Vriti, and third is examples. In the first chapter of the Dhvanyaloka, he establishes Dhvani by refusing all the objects, by answering all the questions and doubts of the anti-Dhvani scholars. The second chapter deals with the varieties of Dhvani from the standpoints of its suggested uh, Vyangya. The third chapter deals with the varieties of Dhvani form, the standpoint of the suggestion Vyanjaka. And the fourth deal with the endless of the creative imagination of the poet and main rus in Ramayana and Mahabharata. And this is the response of Dhvani theory in aesthetics, which I taken from ChatGPT. So it answered it like this way, like elaborate the Dhvani theory is a central concept in Indian aesthetics, particularly in the field of literary criticism. The theory is based on the idea that the primary function of poetry and other forms of literature is to evoke emotions and feelings in the reader of or listener. According to Dhvani theory, there are two types of meaning in literature: the explicit or surface meaning and the suggested or implied meaning. While the surface meaning is conveyed through the words and sentence of the text, the suggested meaning is not directly expressed but is instead evoked through suggestion or implications. Then the Dhvani theory distinguishes three types of suggested meanings. The first is Vyangya or elusive suggestion. So this is the first type of Dhvani. And this is a suggestion that refer to something else, such as a cultural or mythological reference, which the reader or listener is expected to understand and interpret. Then second is vastu or objective suggestion. This refers to the emotions and feelings that are evoked in the leader or listener by the words and imagery of text. Alankar and the third one is Alankar or ornamentation. This refers to the literary devices uses in text such as metaphors, similes, and other figures of speech, which contribute to the suggested meaning of the text. The Dhvani theory suggests that the suggested meaning is the most important aspect of literature, as it has the power to evoke emotions and feelings in the reader or listener. It is through the suggested meaning that the literary work achieves its aesthetic value, and the reader or listener experiences the rasa or aesthetic pleasure. Overall, the Dhvani theory emphasizes the importance of the suggested meaning in literature and the power of suggestion to evoke emotions and feelings in the reader or listener. So, conclusion: it is a truth that poets focus their attention first and foremost in the explicit sense. However, this fact does not imply that Dhvani is unimportant or undervalue. A man eager to view things is seen looking for the torque first as a means of achieving His goal. Then the torque isn't end in itself; it's only a tool for achieving another goal. Poets likewise are interested in the explicit sense as a means of communicating their other ideas in a suggestive manner. The suggested concepts are the goal that the poets use to drive their selection of other subjects. These are my work cited. Thank you. And anyone have a question, then you can ask me.
Hina, my question is what is the contribution of Anand Vardhana in Dhvani?
Uh, Anand Vardhan was a leading figure in 19th century, and before him there were many Alankarikas who believes that shabdas and arthas are more important in poetry, and because of it poetry become interested, and beauty that thing beautify poetry. And Anand Vardhan was a leading figure, was contributed in many important things in poetry.
Not very beauty also. It is not posted yet.
How does Dhvani contribute to the overall emotional impact of a literary work?
Dhvani theory is important in Indian poetics. In this is In this theory, Anandvardhan was leading figure in this theory, and in this the Dhvani theory, many Dhvani theory is important in poetry because of its elements. Poetry become poetry beautify and reader likes to read it. So that's why Dhvani is important, and it implies emotional things in literature. So thank you.
A very good noon to all of you. On the fourth day of presentation in paper number 109, Literary Theory and Indian Literary Criticism and Indian Aesthetics, my today's topic for presentation is use of figurative language in Robert Froud's poem, The Road Not Taken. This is my personal information. These are some major and important points which I am gonna discuss about. Introduction about I.A. Richards, definition and function of figurative language, use of figurative language in the poem The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, and conclusion. So let's begin with an introduction. Poetry is characterized by many critics, but the most significant is its language, which is artificial and essentially different language from the common everyday language that people speak. The poet is permitted with a special kind of liberty in using the language to convey his message. The poet may go beyond the limits of the language by using the idea to communicate new areas of experience. It gives the poet a new chance to twist and rest the language on the basis of poet's need in using the figurative language. A figure of speech in poetry is not a mere decorative part and a pretty and fancy way of saying something which might be said literally. So here we can understand that poetry is a genre which is characterized by many critics. But the most important and significant aspects of poetry is its language. And the poet is permitted with a special kind of liberty, or we can say freedom, in using the language the way he wants to convey the message through his poem. About I.A. Richards, British poet and scholar Ivor Armstrong, here is a mistake. Richards was born in the year 1983. He educated at Cambridge University, Macdonald's College. His scholarship and research on how students read poetry helped a lot in shaping the foundation of new criticism and its emphasis on close reading. With C.K. Ogden, Richards created the English tool of Basic English, a simplified version of the English language that in the interest of clear expression Richard's scholarly work includes the practical criticism in the year 1929, the philosophy of rhetoric in 1936, and the meaning of meaning in 1946. So here are the three scholarly major works by I.A. Richards, and that three major works played a very vital role in shaping the new modern criticism. In his own poetry, Richard wove philosophical argument with musical turns. Critic Helen Wendler describes his own poetry as gnarled, intellectual, angular, and unsparing. I.A. Richards was regarded as the important psychological critic who has studied poetry methodically. His principal works, his principal critical works, as we have seen in the earlier slides, have given a new dimension to modern criticism. I.A. Richards is not merely learned and conceptual, but also iconoclastic and innovative. So here in this slide, we get an idea about how I.A. Richards studied poetry through the vast reading. He was a man of very vast reading, and he studied poetry very deeply and methodically. And his three scholarly major works also given a new dimension and new insight to the modern criticism. Critic Helen Wendler describes his own poetry as gnarled, means something very rough, or we can say not easy to understand. Angular means the poetry which has shown so many shapes and curves. I mean, we cannot get idea very easily, but there are so many shapes in the poetry. That is the meaning of angular. And unsparing means merciless, we can say that. But still people wants to read the poetry because it is intellectual. So that is how we can understand about the concept of I.A. Richards in modern criticism. Definitions of figurative language. Figurative language uses words or expression with a meaning that is different from the literal interpretations. Figurative language is a language that is used by imaginative and not literary, because the use of the words diverging from its usual meaning. Figure of speech introduces an ambiguity between literal and figurative interpretations. Ambiguity means very kind of blur. So, in figure of speech, whenever we are discussing about figures of speech, there is a very kind of ambiguous or ambiguity between literal or figurative interpretations. In one article, Queen stated that the simplest definitions of a figure of speech is an intended deviation from ordinary usage. Carafe also declared that figure of speech has function to explain, strengthen, alive, stimulate, decorate an object. It gave beneficial for the teachers and students for focusing on figurative language in the classroom. So here we can understand about the definitions of figurative language, and how other critics also reflect their ideas on the figure of speech. What is the function of criticism? The function of figurative language is to stimulate a certain image. It affects the language beauty of work in both oral and written communication. Lazar declared that figurative language can provide a useful springboard for integrated skills like reading, speaking, and writing. So that is how figurative language also helps us in developing or integrating our skills like reading, speaking, and writing. Use of figurative language in the poem The Road Not Taken. The first one is symbolism. One dominant and symbolic term used in the poem is road. In the poem, it refers to the decision that the speaker made in his life. It likewise refers to us also. In every decision we make, we reject the other choice and lose our chance to see what it may offer. The decision we make contributes to what we are. In the poem, The Road Not Taken, the speaker is in dilemma that on which path or on which path he wants to go. And we can relate this symbol with human life also, that we sometimes also confused between the choices that we have to make, and sorry, the decisions we make contributes to what we are. Lines from the poem: and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. In these two lines, the road is used as a metaphor for the future life. The traveler tries to look into his future, but it was not possible for him to predict the consequences of his choice. That in the poem, if the speaker if the speaker will decided that I want to follow this particular path, but somehow he was not ready to predict the consequences, that if I will follow this path, then what will be the consequences I have to face after this. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. There is an there is an affirmation of one road being traveled less, which was taken by the traveler, and that choice of road has changed his life. Second one is rhyme, form, and meter. The poem consists of 4 stanzas, and each stanza is composed of 5 lines. These are called quintains. Each quintain follows ABAAB rhyming scheme, as is illustrated in the first stanza. So here I have taken the lines from the poem, the first stanza, in which you can see the rhyming pattern of the poem. Setting. The poem used the forest as its setting. The plot of the poem starts with the speaker having contact with nature as he wanders in the yellow woods. It is in this travel when he finds two diverged roads. So in the poem, Robert Frost, as we have studied also, that Robert Frost was a realistic and nature poet, and that's why in this particular poem he depicts so many natural elements, like using the words yellow woods and two diverged roads. The setting describes the overall effect of the speaker's difficulty in making one big life-changing decision his life. That the speaker is in dilemma, that on which path he wants to go further, and that is the life-changing decision in his life. Continue with this sound. Like the speaker who walks slowly by the woods, then stopping and contemplating which path to take. We feel the same experiences as suggested by the rhythm of the poem. The speaker is unsure which way to go. He wants to be different by the choices he makes. The problem is that upon examination of the two paths, the speaker discovers that both roads appear about the same, which complicates the speaker's decision making. I would like to conclude my presentation with the following points: that the road not taken can be very well understood from the vantage point of view of new criticism. New critics focused on the variety and degree on certain literary devices, specifically metaphor, irony, symbolism, tone, or the sound of the poem. The new critics emphasized close reading as a way to engage with the text, and also paid close attention to the interactions between form and meaning. So, as we have studied in the new criticism, that the author's point of view and biography are not that much important elements, but rather than it requires close reading to the interactions between the form and meaning, and that is the I.A. Richards want to convey us through the figurative language of in new criticism. This is the response which I get from ChatGPT, and when I asked about my topic to ChatGPT, I received a very reliable, or we can say authentic response, because it gave very descriptive about that how figurative language can be used in the poem, and it gives so many points. So that is how ChatGPT helped me in this way. These are my work citations, and now I am open for questions.
Also have to see in the morning also nobody has said how to cite ChatGPT. You take him that you have to cite that also. So how will you cite? So you ask ChatGPT on how to cite ChatGPT. Generate a response and see what you are getting. Whether it is with C or what. Where will it go alphabetically?
Hetal, how does figurative language impacts on the reader?
Okay, figurative language impact the reader in the way that they can understand about the not only about the biography or the other elements in the poem, but in the new criticism we have to think in a different way. That is why I.A. Richards implied figurative language in this poem, and through figurative language, reader can also enhance their knowledge in about the other like metaphors, symbolism in the poem, and that is why figurative language impact the reader through the reading of poetry in a vast and vantage point of view.
Hetal, as you mentioned in your slides that I.A. Richards was regarded as the important psychological critic. So, what is this different view on poetry?
Okay, so as I mentioned in my slide, that I.A. Richards was a man of very vast reading, and he think very differently about the concept of new criticism and poetry, and he also referred as an important psychological critic through his point of views, and his views on new criticism and figurative language. It shaped also other students in enhance their knowledge about the new criticism. So that is why I.A. Richards regarded as a very modifying critic in the new criticism. Okay, thank you.
Hello, dear friends. I am Gopi Dervaliya. Today, I am going to deal with this topic, Alamkara in Indian aesthetic. This is my personal information. Table of contents. First is introduction, Indian aesthetics, chief schools of Indian aesthetics, and Alamkara, and then conclusion. First is introduction. Indian aesthetics takes its start from the projections of Bharat in his magnificent work entitled Natya Shastra, and winding its course through the presentations of Bhama, Dandi, and Vaman, ultimately receives a full-bodied form in the writings of Anandvardhan and Abhinav Gupta, Vishwanath, and Jagannath. The word Alankar means establishment, and it is always associated with the beautification of the work of art. But this word does not indicate only the mere establishment in the work of art. The concept of Alankar performs a number of classifications in order to study Sanskrit poetics, but among them, two of them are considered to be of primary importance. They are the Upma and the Upme. Indian aesthetics, Mammat, the author of Kavya Prakash, through his profound exposition refuting all the adversaries of Dhvani, defended and re-established the theory of Dhvani indisputably. And throughout 6 centuries ahead, this doctrine was acceptable by all the acharyas. Even Jaidev, who had accepted Alankar to be an inseparable component of poetry, dealt with Dhvani in his book Chandralok. Vishwanath, through established Ras as an Atma of poetry. Yet, while treating the theory of Devant with all its varieties and sub-varieties in his book Sahitya Darpan, accepted Ras as an important variety of Devyant. These are the chief schools of Indian poetics and names their pioneers. Ras, the theory of aesthetic pleasure by Bharat, Alankarvad, the theory of poetic figure by Bhama, Riti Siddhant, the theory of style by Vaman, Dhvani Siddhant, the theory of suggestion by Anandvardhan, and Vakrokti, the theory of obliquity by Kontak, and Ochintya, the theory of propriety by Kshemendra. Here I have given my blog link on Indian aesthetic, so you can watch and read. These are the three main key figures of Alankars: Bhama, Dandi, and Vaman. So, Alankar, the theory of Indian poetics is said to have begun with the advent of Alankar school. Though Bharat refers to Alankar and talks about its four types, they were incidental to his discussion on dramaturgy. Kavya Shastra took off in earnest with the Kavyalankar of Pama and Kavya Darshan of Dandi. Through their works, these writers started serious inquiry into Kavya Sarita, and they started that Alankar, the figure of speech, and underlying principles that govern the application of Alankar, is responsible for poetic beauty. They believe that Alankar is the distinguishing factor that accounts for poetic charm. What is Alankar? Normally translated as ornament or embellishment. The word Alankar was used by the above mentioned critics to refer to individual figurative technique of poetry and also to refer to the fundamental principles of propriety that govern their application in poetry. Besides a whole host of concepts like gun, riti, dhvani, dosh, and ochintya were brought under the umbrella from term of Alankar. They believe ornaments enhance the beauty of a woman, and so does Alankar to Kavya, and that Alankar is crucial in invoking ras. Bharat's Natya Shastra is the earliest work on Alankar. After Natya Shastra, the earliest works on Alankar are Kavya Darshan of Dandi and Kavya Tarikra of Bhama. Both of them belong to the 17th century, and Bhama stresses the importance of Alankar and brings all Alankars under the general term Vakrokti. Dandi has defined and classified Kavya more elaborately than Bhama. He stresses the importance of Alankar by bringing everything that beautifies the Kavya under the general term Alankar. Types of Alankar. Rudrata divides Alankar into two types, Artha Alankar and Shabda Alankar. Shabda Alankar means based on phonetic form, or Artha Alankar based on meaning. Mammat in his Kavya Prakash enumerates 61 alankars and groups them into 7 types: Upma, Rupak, Aprastuta Prashansa, Deepak, Vyatirek, Virod, and Samuchayan. Here are different views on alankars. The great scholar Dandi uses the term alankar in the sense that cause beauty in poetry, and he writes, Kavya Shobhakaran Dharman Alamkaran Prakashate. Vaman said the poetry is acceptable from embellishment, but he is careful to explain embellishment not in the narrow sense of poetic figures but in the broad sense of beauty. And he says, Kavyam Gruhyam Alankarat Saundaryam Alankara. Alankar Siddhant of Bhama defines Kavya togetherness of sound and meaning. According to Bhama, Alankar is the essential element of poetry, and it consists of the striking manner of putting a striking idea in an equally striking word. Anandvardhan's view in Dhvanyalok that Alankar are those elements which, depending upon word and meaning, minister to the generation of poetic charm. Also certifies the creative use of language in literature. To conclude, the poet uses Alankar with a view to increasing the beauty, enhancing the qualities, and depicting nature, heightening the feelings, delineating the action or activities and circumstances, exposing the internal state, delineating the character, describing the physical beauty, exhibiting the objective, despiting the sense, characterizing the spontaneous movements, and putting thoughts in tune with feelings. These are my work citation, and this is the ChatGPT's answer on my topic, Indian aesthetics and Alankar. Thank you. Now you can ask me question.
So you can give this opinion on this, that how do you find this response? Is it appropriate, not appropriate? ChatGPT's response. So what is your opinion on that? That you have to see. Do you think it is useful or not?
It is answer on Alamkar and Indian poetics. It is very useful and authentic and relevant answer. Of here. What here ChatGPT gave this answer. Alankar is also known as Alankar, and Indian aesthetics, and here is ChatGPT gives many Sanskrit words like Sanskrit, um, uh, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, and these terms are also used in this Hinduism and Buddhism also, and also give the very Indian aesthetic concept like Ras, Bhav, Shringar, and Dhvani.
Gopi, my question is, according to you, can Alankaras be used in modern Indian literature?
Yes, according to me, Alankar continue to be used in modern Indian literature. As we can see that many contemporary Indian authors used Alankar in their writing to create more aesthetic and also enjoyable for the readers.
Gopi, my question is, what is the significance of Alankars in Indian literature?
Yes, Alankars play a vital role in Indian literature as they add the depth, beauty, and appeal in the text, and They are used to convey complex in simple and complex ideas in a simple and aesthetic manner, and making the text more aesthetic and enjoyable for the readers.
And then in the class, you and how many words you should make it in advance. That is not allowed. Otherwise, everybody will be doing their criticism. They will not listen. But that is not allowed. Otherwise, tomorrow we learning from everybody will be doing that. Nobody will submit the work and they will be doing the work. And I done this last, so I will prepare in the class on it. So it is not your at least 1 hour before you have to submit your work. So you are free to listen here. Everybody's presentation. So if you allow one, then tomorrow everybody will learn from you. It will spread like a virus, and everybody will do the same thing. Nobody will submit.
Hello everyone, my name is Katariya Ghanshyam, and today's my presentation topic is persona and shadow as shadow archetypes. This is my introduction. Table of content. In this presentation, I will discuss about the introduction of archetypal criticism, then the two archetypes, persona and shadow. For example, in the novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, then movie Fight Club, and conclusion. Archetypal criticism. It is the in literary criticism, the term archetype denotes the recurrent narrative design patterns of action, character types, themes, images, which are identifiable in a wide variety of works of literature, as well as in myth, dreams, and even social rituals. The literary theory of the archetypes was the treatment of myth by a group of comparative anthropologists at Cambridge University, especially James Fraser, who is famous for his work The Golden Bough, and Carl Jung for his archetypal philosophy, and the experience in the life of our very ancient ancestor, which Carl Jung mentions, survive in the collective unconscious of the human race and are expressed in myth, religion, dreams, and private fantasies, as well as in work of literature. Archetypal literary criticism was given impetus by Bodkin's archetypal patterns in poetry, that was published in 1934. And the archetypal literary criticism flourished in 1950s and 16s. Some archetypal critics have dropped Jung's theory of the collective unconscious as the deep source of this pattern. In the words of Northrop Frye, this theory is unnecessary hypothesis, and the recurrent archetypes are simply there how they got there, however they got there. So the persona archetype, the persona, this is the outward face we present to the world. This hides our real face. This, according to Jung, is the conformity archetype. This is the public face we put on to our peers, our bosses, our community, and sometimes even our families. This is not who we really are. Originally, the word persona meant a mask worn by actors to indicate the role they played on this level. It is both a protective covering and an asset in mixing with the other people. Civilized society depends on interaction between people through the persona. The I usually deals aspect of ourselves that we present to the outside world. The persona is a functional complex that comes into existence for reasons of adaptation of personal convenience. The persona is what which it reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. There is this shadow archetype. The shadow archetype, this is animal side of our personality. Freud called this the ID. This is the source of both our creative and destructive energies. This is the line with the theory of evolution. This archetype reflects the predisposition that had once upon a time survival values. The felicity that we are forced to live with the endure every day becomes a sort of a trap. When we are made to go against our natural selves, we begin to question who we are and oftentimes find ourselves in the middle of an identity crisis. Jung stated it could actually be psychologically determinantal to our well-being when our environmental does not support us in a use of our dominant function. This is called falsification of type. When we are forced to live our daily lives presenting a mask or different persona, then we are comfortable with this becomes our abnormal norm. The shadow is a normal problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspect of the personality as present and real. So here is this example of this persona and shadow archetype. The novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. In this novel, we find the both persona and shadow archetype. In Dr. Jekyll is the present persona archetype as he only choose to live as a sophisticated man in front of society, while he is actually not that type of person. In his inside he is a wild person, and through inventing a medicine to separate his personality, he becomes Mr. Edward Hyde. That is the shadow personality of his. In similar way, in the movie Fight Club, directed by Edward Fincher, uh, the David Fincher, there is this two characters. First is the protagonist of the film is simply called as the narrator and have no name in the entire movie. He represents the persona archetype as he buys the all type of things that a regular person who in a working class buy, and have a home and all that type of thing that in a society everybody requires. But in his split personality, he creates his different identity that is Tyler Durden. We can say he this is the shadow personality of him that is not social society loving person, and he lives in his own way, and he represents masculinity, and the he overthrows the social norms. The shadow is a normal problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considering a moral effort to become conscious. It involves the I recognize the dark aspect of the personality. Uh, it- he takes a name, earns a title, exercise a function. He is this or that in a certain sense of this real, yet in relation to the essential individuality of the person concerned, it is only a secondary reality, a compromise formation in making which other often have greater share than he. Here, the shadow personality and the persona of uh, Dr. Jekyll we can find in this passage. It's from the novel. Between these two, I now felt I had to choose. My two natures had a memory in common, but all other faculties were most unequal shared between them. Jekyll, who was composite, and now with the most sensitive apprehension, now with her greedy gusto, projected and shared in the pleasure and adventures of Hyde. But Hyde was a different to Jekyll, or but remembered him as the mountain bandit remembers the cave in which he conceals himself from pursuit. The shadow is composed for the most part of repressed desire and uncivilized impulse and moral inferior motives, childish fantasy and resentments, all those things about oneself one is not proud of. And we find that in both the example as Dr. Jekyll hides his desire and the uncivilized impulse, and he creates his shadow self. Conclusion: the realization of shadow is inhibited by the persona. To the degree that we identify with a bright persona, the shadow is correspondingly dark. Thus, the shadow and persona stands in a compensatory relation, and the conflict between them is invariably present in an outbreak of a neurosis. The characteristic depressed at such a time indicates the need to realize that one is not all one pretends or wish to be. Responsibility for the shadow rests with the ego. That is why the shadow is a moral problem. It is one thing to realize what is looks like what we are capable of. It is quite something else to determine what we can live out or with. The shadow is not, however, only the dark underside of the personality. It also consists of the instincts, ability, and positive moral quality that have long been buried or never been conscious. The shadow is a morally somewhat inferior, primitive, unadapted, and awkward, not wholly bad. It even contains childish or primitive qualities which would, in a way, vitalize and ambitious human existence, but conversation forbids. This is my work cited, and this is the response that I got from ChatGPT about the persona and shadow archetype. It is the definition and the information in here is very good. It clears the meaning and the concept of shadow and persona archetypes. Also, in the archetypal criticism, it gives the common information about what is the archetypal criticism, and also about some of its good thing. Thank you. Now you can ask me questions.
Ghanshyam, my question is that how can an individual's persona be challenged or established in literature or in real life?
The individual's persona is the thing that he puts up in front of society, and when he is depressed, or we can say that he goes all his limit to try to convince the society that his persona is what he puts in front of others is real. As long as that maintains, he stays in that way. Otherwise he can oppressed by it and become what he really is, and can input his shadow identity also.
Ghanshyam, my question is, can you elaborate something more about how shadow archetype reflects animal side?
Yes, in this shadow archetype, the one movie was there that was split. In that movie, the protagonist have a 30 or 40 personality of his, that is psychological disorder that he have, and in that he have a child's identity, and sophisticated man's identity, and even a beast identity also. So we can say that those are all his feelings or desire that is oppressed, and is in a corner that he puts, and when he loses his control, it comes out. Thank you.
Hello everyone. On the fourth day of presentation, I am dealing with the topic the cyclical pattern of the four mythos of Northrop Frye. This is my personal information. This is roadmap of presentation. First, I will deal with introduction, and then about author, then mythos of archetypal imagery, then structure of mythos. There are four structure: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Then answer by ChatGPT, and then conclusion and work citation. So first introduction. Mythos is the Greek word. It means a story or plot. Frye divided stories into four categories or parts of the cycle of mythos: comedy, the mythos of spring; romance, the mythos of summer; tragedy, the mythos of autumn; and irony or satire, the mythos of winter. The third essay, an archetypal criticism, a theory of myths, is divided to myths, or as Frye says, mythoi, to remind you especially of Aristotle's first element, mythos or plot. This essay traces out four easily typical uh, opposing myths: tragic and comical, romantic and ironic, which, when Frye is finished, may have exhausted the interposition plot of literature. The structure vein of this essay is also the most elaborate in and the books. Then about author, Herman Northrop Frye was born in 14 July 1912 at Sherbrooke, Canada, and died in 23rd January 1991, Toronto. He was a Canadian educator and literary critic who wrote much on Canadian literature and culture, and became best known as one of the most important literary theorists of the 20th century. He is famous for his masterpiece, Anatomy of Criticism, four essays. These four essays are titled Historical Criticism, Theory of Modes; Ethical Criticism, Theory of Symbols; Archetypal Criticism, Theory of Myths; and Rhetoric Criticism, Theory of Genres. His notable works are Anatomy of Criticism, 4 essays, and Fearful Symmetry, a study of William Blake. Then the mythos of archetypal imagery. Frye's major concern here is to make explicit the structures of archetypal imagery from the perspective of mythos. Within the several cycles, Frye observed four main phases: the seasons of the year, spring, summer, fall or autumn, and winter; periods of the day, morning, noon, evening, and night; aspects of the water, rains, fountains, rivers, sea, and snow; the periods of life, youth, maturity, old age, and death. These all are stand as the archetype in literature. Uh, the fourfold division has important consequences for the subsequent structure of Frye's argument. Semantically, the cyclical paradigm is located within the order of nature, whereas the dialectical one moves from the order of nature toward or into the higher apocalyptic realm. The existence of this broad cyclical and dialectical movement within mythos lead Frye to conclude that there are narrative categories of literature broader than or logically prior to the ordinary literary genres. He calls these parageneric elements mythoi. Another fundamental distinction in Frye's master design for the cyclical and dialectical movement of mythoi underlie the entire second half of Anatomy of Criticism. In terms of the origin of his most basic categories, mythoi derive ultimately from poetic imagery, or more accurately from the movement of poetic imagery which is a part of our experience of literature. Frye's method of argument at this point is based upon the similarities of movement between the seven categories of reality and the cyclical and dialectical process of the archetypes. Cyclically, the analogy produce four mythoi: comedy, romance, tragedy, and irony or satire. This latter also called realism. Dialectically, it produces an upward and downward movement between innocence and experience, apocalypse and nature, the ideal and the actual, the comic and the tragic. The cyclic pattern of the four mythoi and the dialectical arrangement of the mythical and realistic worlds provides only the skeletal outline for Frye's taxonomy. The mythos of archetypes is a complex theory, the fullest and most elaborately conceived section of the anatomy, which is accounts for but one half of Frye's theory of archetypes. It comprises practically one fourth of the entire book. The elaborateness of its design result chiefly from the theory of phases, the word referring in this text to the variety of literary structure which can be isolated in any one mythos. Frye is able to discover 6 phases for each of the pre-generic mythoi. This yield, of course, 24 separate structure. The argument is made more complex, however, by the fact that adjacent mythoi tend to merge. And Frye, in his Anatomy of Criticism, said that if we think of our experience of this mythoi, we shall realize that they form two opposite pairs, tragedy and comedy, contrast rather than blend, and so do romance and irony, the champions respectively of the idols and actual. On the other hand, comedy blends insensibly into satire at one extreme and into romance at the other. Romance may be comic or tragic. Tragic extends from high romance to bitter and ironic realism. To this should be added the fourth possible relation, namely that irony merged insembly into tragedy and comedy. The procedure used to define each of the mythoi, comedy, romance, tragedy, and irony or satire, follows a similar pattern throughout and derives from Frye's attempt to answer 3 questions. If we answer these 3 questions, we can understand the genre or literature. First is what is the structure of each mythos. Second is what are the typical characters of each. Then what are the 6 phases within each category. And for this, Frye said that in drama, characterization depends on function. What a character is follows from what he has to do in the play. Dramatic function, in its turn, depend on the structure of the play. The character has certain things to do because the play has such and such a shape. The structure of the play, in its turn, depend on the category of the play. If it is a comedy, its structure will require a comic resolution and a prevailing comic mood. The main presupposition in this passage is that pre-generic categories like comedy and tragedy do exist. Their existence depending, as we have observed, on Frye's analogical and dialectical argument. The next assumption is that these general categories will determine the resolution and mood of the given work. Together, these constitute its structure, which is the central concept Frye uses to discuss the typical form of each mythos. Character, finally, in Frye's Aristotelian argument, does not determine structure, but it determined by it. So, structure of mythos. Mythos is divided in four structure: spring, autumn, winter, and summer. The analysis of the archetypal structure of the mythos is based on two of the four typical patterns that Frye isolated. His treatment of comedy and romance. The normal pattern of comedy, he says, comes from the plot structure of Greek New Comedy as transmitted by Plautus and Terence. What normally happens is that a young man wants a young woman, that is, desire is resisted by the some opposition, usually paternal, and that near the end of the play, some twist in the plot enable the hero to have his will. This type of structure we could find in romance. The top half of the natural cycle is the world of romance and the analogy of innocence. The lower half is the world of realism and the analogy of experience. There are thus four main types of mythical movement within romance, within experience, down and up. The downward movement is the tragic movement, the wheel of fortune falling from innocence toward hamartia and from hamartia to catastrophe. The upward movement is the comic movement from threatening complication to a happy ending and a general assumption of post-dated innocence in which everyone lives happily ever after. In Dante, the upward movement is through purgatory. This is the wheel or cyclical structure of these genres. The upward is the comic movement, is known as romance, and the downward is tragic movement, is realism. The spring is stand as comedy, summer is stand as romance, tragedy is stand as autumn, and irony or satire is stand as winter. The spring, uh, the down spring or birth phase, the play is starting by the birth, the myths of the birth of hero or a revival and a resurrection of creation and of the defeat of the power of darkness, winter, and death. Subordinate characters, the father and the mother, the archetype of romance and of most dithyrambic and rhapsodic poetry. So the spring or in genre of comedy, Frye tried to structuralize the plot of it, and he said that it will be most convenient to work out the theory of comic construction from drama using illustration from fiction only incidentally. What normally happen is that as we seen in previous slide, that a young man want a young woman, that his desire is resisted by some opposition, usually paternal, and that near the end of the play, some twist in the plot enable the hero to have his will. In this simple pattern, there are several complex elements. In this first place, the movement of comedy is usually a movement from one kind of society to another. At the beginning of the play, the obstructing characters are in charge of the place society, and the audience recognize that they are usurpers. At the end of the play, the device in the plot that bring hero and heroines together causes a new society to criticize around the hero, and the moment when this occurs is the point of resolution in the action, the comic discovery, anachronosis, or a cognitio. Then the summer. In the archetypes of literature, it said that zenith, summer, and marriage or a triumph phase. Myth is of apotheosis of sacred marriage and of entering into paradise. Subordinate characters, the companion and the bride, the archetype of comedy, pastoral, and idol. In the complete form of romance is clearly the successful quest, and such a completed form has three main stages: the stage of perilous journey and the preliminary minor adventure, the crucial struggle, usually some kind of battle in which either the hero or his foe or both must die, and exaltation of the hero. We may call these three stages respectively using Greek terms: the agons or conflict, the pathons or death struggle, and the anagnosis or discovery, the recognition of the hero, who has clearly proved himself to be a hero even if he does not survive the conflict. The story of Adam and Eve in Eden has thus a canonical position for poets in our tradition, whether they believe in its historicity or not. The reason for the greater profoundly of canonical myth is not solely tradition but the result of the greater degree of metaphorical identification that is possible in myth. In literary criticism, the myth is normally the metaphorical key to displacement of romance, hence the importance of the quest myth of the Bible in what follows. Then the Ottoman as tragedy, the sunset, Ottoman and death phase, myths of fall, of dying god, of violent death and sacrifice, and of isolation of hero, subordinate characters, the traitor and the siren, the archetype of tragedy and elegy. Thanks as usual to Aristotle, the theory of tragedy is in considerably better shape than the other three mythoi, and we can deal with it more briefly as the ground is more familiar. Like comedy, tragedy is best and most easily studied in drama, but it is not confident to drama nor to action that end in disaster. Plays that are usually called or classified with tragedy and in serenity, like Cymbeline, or even joy, like Alcestis, or Resigns is Esther, or in an ambiguous mood that is hard to define, like Philoctetes. On the other hand, Vila predominantly somber mood form, part of the unity of the tragic structure. Concentrating on mood does not intensify the tragic effect. If it did, Andronicus might well be the most powerful of Shakespeare's tragedy. The source of tragedy effect must be sought, as Aristotle pointed out, in the tragic mythos or plot structure. Then the last is winter, stand as irony or satire. The darkness, winter, and dissolution phase, myths of the dreams of this power, myths of a flood and the return of chaos, of the defeat of the hero, subordinate characters, the old and the witch, the archetype of satire. We can see this in the conclusion of the Dunciad. The chief distinction between irony and satire is that satire is militant irony. Its moral norms are relatively clear and it assumes standard against which the grotesque and absurd are measured. Sheer invective or name calling is satire in which there is a relatively little irony. On the other hand, whenever a reader is not sure what the author's attitude is or what his own is supposed to be, we have irony with relatively little satire. Fielding's Jonathan Wild is satiric irony. Certain flat moral judgment made by the narrator are in accord with the decorum of the work, but would be out of key in, say, Madame Bovary, irony in consistent both with complete realism of content and fantasy, a content which the reader recognize as a grotesque and at least an implicit moral standard, the latter being essential in the militant attitude to experience. Some phenomena, such as the revenges of disease, may be called grotesque, but to make fun of them would not be very effective satire. So I've asked to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT give me a wonderful answer. It It described this four cycle of mythos, and also gave the examples of all mythos, and it analyze and elaborate the thing with the reference of Northrop Frye. So, in conclusion, literature is viewed as emerging out of core of myth and as a system based on recurrent pattern. These parameters were also reflected in other contemporary movements such as structuralism and Jungian concept of the collective unconsciousness. Frye argued that literature drew upon genres such as romance, tragedy, irony or satire, and comedy. These are work citation. Thank you.
Gayatri, my question is, how does Frye's theory of the cyclical pattern of mythos apply to different genres of literature?
This cyclical pattern of mythos apply in different genres like comedy, tragedy, and epic. Also, we could find here North of Frye structure his this four mythos from spring to the winter, that from birth of hero to the resolution. And we could find in so many literature that in if we see the example as chat gpt give the example of Macbeth as tragedy, there is also the from the hero's arousal, and at the end of this dissolution, we could find this pattern of mythos in different genres.
Gayatri, my question is, can the cyclical pattern of mythos can be applied to art forms other than literature?
Yes, this cyclical pattern also applied in other form, in painting also, in movies, in cinemas also. Cinema, even North of Fry also make this as not only for literature, but from cinema and for other work. We could find so many movies that shows this cyclical pattern from spring to winter. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today is the fourth day of our presentation season 2. Today's topic of my presentation is elements of archetypes in Harry Potter. So let's start with the presentation. These are my personal information. Table of content. First is introduction of archetypal criticism, Harry Potter's an evolving hero archetype, Harry Potter's archetypal journey, Harry's hero journey, AI result of my presentation topic. So ChatGPT gave me some result. I will discuss further.
First is introduction of archetypal criticism. According to Daniel Russell Brown, he explained in his article "A Look at Archetypal Criticism" about archetypal criticism what it is have been well stated by Walter K. Gordon. I quote: "The basic contention of archetypal criticism is that literary expression is an unconscious product of the collective experience of the entire species. As such, literature is therefore related with the man's culture past." I unquote. To Bodkin, probably the most famous exponent of this critical approaches, has relied on Jung's formulation, although not slavishly, about the collective unconsciousness in mankind in order to discuss the powerful attraction of poetry. The images are valued because they give, even though this function remains unrecognized, expression to feelings that were seeking a language to relieve their inner urgency. So this quote is also by the to Mud Blood, and this is the ChatGPT gave me some information about archetypal criticism. So it is very wonderful information. If you want to rely on this, then you can also you can have some information, basic information of archetypal criticism from this information. Harry Potter and the Evolving Hero Archetype. Kellen Gitt explained in her article Harry Potter and the Evolving Hero Archetype about hero or hero archetype of a journey of Harry's whole life. The hero archetype aids humanity in making decisions about good and evil, action and inaction, destiny and free will. Harry Potter is a part of a growing movement towards a dependent hero, one that includes television shows, heroes, and the most recent Batman movies also have the hero archetype. Harry would fail time and time again if it were not for sheer luck and clever friends. So this is also some criticism of hero archetype in Harry Potter, like Kelina Gates says in article, like one that includes the television shows hero. Harry would fail time and again if his friends were not there, like if he don't have the support system of Dumbledore and his friends, Hermione and Ron. If they don't have this, if Harry don't have their support, then Harry might be failed. She says that. Professor Snape tells Dumbledore that it became apparently to me very quickly that he had no extraordinary talent at all. He has fought his way out of a number of tight corners by a simply combination of sheer luck and more talented friends. So this is also a quote by Professor Snape in the movie. He is a medical to the last degree. Harry shows weakness and humanity. His most valuable weapon are not Superman strength or uneasy courage, but empathetic love and deep compassion. So in Harry Potter series, they shows the Harry's main kind or humanity side of the Harry Potter, not the supernatural side of Harry. I want to show you one video which is an expert video. In this video also a professor talking about the same thing, the hero archetype. So let's start watching the video.
Which I can best explain by saying, let me tell you a story. It's the story of a young man. He's an orphan, living with his aunt and his uncle, and he thinks he's totally ordinary, until one day he finds out that not only is he not ordinary, he's the most extraordinary person who ever lived. And with the help and guidance of a wise old man, He learns how to use his special gift to save the world. I see you laughing already. What story is it? Harry Potter. He's an orphan living with his aunt and his uncle. Thinks he's totally ordinary until one day, you're a wizard, Harry. He goes off to Hogwarts and with the help and guidance of a wise old man, Dumbledore, learns how to use his special gift to save the world. But there are other answers to that question. Star Wars. Luke Skywalker is an orphan living with his aunt and his uncle, thinks he's totally ordinary until he discovers the Force is with him, and with the help and guidance of a wise old man, Obi-Wan learns how to use his special gift to save the world. I heard somebody say, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is an orphan living with his aunt and his uncle, totally ordinary until one day, bitten by a radioactive spider. Oh no, I'm not ordinary after all. This is the heroic archetype, also sometimes called the hero's journey, and people have been talking about this since Joseph Campbell wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces in the 1950s. These are frequently the stories that people are most actively looking forward to. And I bet you can think of a couple films that are coming up that have this kind of pattern in them. So either that just happens to be the one plot line that gets everybody really excited, or something else is going on in there. And I think the something else that's going on is that not only are the plots similar, but the value systems are similar. Number one, there's some sort of overarching mission that matters more than the individual. Fellowship, companionship, building alliances, those kinds of things always matter. In those stories, the bad guys are always ultimately powerful. Sauron, Voldemort, you name it. Look at Darth Vader, the Emperor. These people are so powerful that nobody could actually take them on and defeat them. But by banding together and forming fellowships, as they do in Lord of the Rings, you're actually able to stand up against ultimate evil power and stop them. They're not always people who actually get along with each other. They may have real differences, but there's a reason they're able to overcome those differences and put their personal grievances aside in favor of this larger mission.
So in this video also, this professor is talking about other movies and other series who have the same archetype, hero archetype in them. Like he also mentioned about the capable, this man who gave this work. And I also mentioned in my presentation about this. Next slide is Harry Potter. Due to key characteristics, Harry illustrates the new breed of heroes, one who is dependent and more realistic. As I mentioned that in the Harry Potter series, they shows the humanity of Harry. Harry is not the only new hero. However, our culture is shifting to the idea of this new hero. Harry Potter does not have superpower. He can create a corporeal patronymus charm, but he cannot create an antidote. Harry stumbles through his magical education with the help of Hermione. He is not the perfect wizard that Dumbledore and Voldemort were at his school time. But yet, somehow he managed to do what Dumbledore could not. Like we know that Voldemort, Tom Riddle, was a very popular or was very good wizard, and in his school days Harry was not that much good wizard. Like we can see in movies also, he was very he was educated by Hermione, his friend, good friend. But yet somehow he managed to be to do like what Dumbledore could not do. Voldemort falls to Harry, an average wizard of average talent and strength. It is a question. Harry gives the average human hope that he or she can succeed in doing great things against all odds. C.G. Jung developed the theory of collective unconsciousness to explain the way modes of behavior are more or less the same everywhere and in all individuals, identical in all men, and thus constitute a common psyche substrate of a super personal nature which is present in every one of us. Jung's theory suggests that all of us have a set default ideas that we revert to. That is, we all think about new data in the same sort of the way. Harry Potter's archetypal journey. So, according to Julia Bowles, in her article named Harry's Journey of Hero, in the Harry Potter novel, the individual station of the hero's journey's appearance in almost all volumes as the protagonist passes through nearly the full journey each year. Therefore, the hero's journey is a transcendable twice within the Harry Potter's narrative. Once as a full journey stretching over all 7 volumes, and as a mice and abium. So this is a formal technique of placing a copy of an image within itself. So it is a technique, and it is a French word within each individual novel, because each school year compresses almost a full quest. Yet, until the end of Deathly Hallows, this is the 7th volume of the Harry Potter series, Harry never crosses the written threshold. Threshold is the forest. Some stations are revisiting within a single volume. Other are left out, and within the individual novels, the different stages and sub stages do not always appear in the order despite below. In the following, only a particularly notable example will be addressed, like in the only 1 volume, like 7th volume of the Harry Potter series, is the Deathly Hallows. In that, Harry returned to the threshold, and every volume says different stories, but the same. Like there are not repetition of the stages and not repetition of the places. So this is the archetypal journey of the Harry's life. Harry's hero's journey. In Christina Olenek, Harry's hero journey, she is might agree about how Harry's journey is perfect example for the hero archetype. In Harry's overall journey, Harry learns the entire prophecy. This new knowledge transforms Harry's identity so that he now sees himself as a marked man. He felt separated and apart from the rest of Hogwarts. So we know that from the first part, like he was orphan, and he was living with his he was living with aunt and uncle. So when he was living with this parent, aunt and uncle, he don't know about his supernatural, like magical things, and he has some power. But after, when first time he talked with the snake, like in when he this happened in the museum, when he talked with the snake in the first part of the volume of the Harry Potter series. So according to Campbell, is also mentioned, this name is also mentioned in the video. Campbell, this is a life renewing step. So we can export Harry's character to have evolved in a significant positive way by the beginning of the Half-Blood Prince. So in the Half-Blood Prince also he left out, like in the Half-Blood Prince, like in that volume of the Harry Potter series, the Voldemort chooses this Draco Malfoy to kill Dumbledore, and after that Draco cannot kill Dumbledore, and Severus Snape, who is professor, he killed Dumbledore, and because of that, also Harry feels like he was not having anyone with him. This is a quote. It takes a great deal to bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. So this quote is by Dumbledore, Albus Dumbledore, and his previous side, like in Christina Olena, she is talking about this perfect example for hero archetype. I might disagree with this, I cannot agree with the hero archetype. It is a best example, but we can say that hero have this bravery and all this. He is alone. Like from the starting of the novel, he was alone, but in the end, like we can say that after he was going to the Hogwarts, then he might find this friends, and because of the friends, he can be a hero. Like if there is no friends, and if there is no Dumbledore, then he might not be a hero or not a chosen one. This is also a result which AI ChatGPT gave me about this presentation. So in this also, it is explaining about everything, like the hero, like how many archetypes this Harry Potter series have. The hero archetype, the mentor archetype, the villain archetype, the sidekick archetype, the trickster archetype, the dimensional and distress. So this all are also archetypes which is used in Harry Potter series. Conclusion: from the analysis above, it is concluded that Harry behaves as an archetypal hero who achieved his self-completion through three stages of hero traits: dispatchery, intentionally, and written. So Harry reacts to this call for adventure, overcomes countless trials with courage and determination, forgoes his own life for the greater good, defended Voldemort, and became the defender of justice. In the processes of his road of trials, he has managed to complete his ego and has gradually grows from the miserable little boy into a hero. Meanwhile, during the course of Harry's transcendence, the shadow archetypal also shows a significant influence on the heroical archetype. Voldemort makes the hero grows in a pain and thus act as a driving force from the opposite side. Harry's defeating Voldemort marks his victory over the negative influence of the shadow archetype, thus symbolizing the achievement of his self-completion. So these are my works cited. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, then you can ask.
Drashti, as you mentioned that in Harry Potter there is a mentor figure for Harry. So according to you, who serve as a mentor figure for the hero, and how do they help him on his journey in Harry Potter?
Yes. So, a mentor figure for Harry is always a Dumbledore, who always support Harry in his whole journey. Like in the Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore dies, in that volume also Dumbledore support Harry to and says that you have to find all the things about Voldemort, and you have to destroy them. So in all way he serves as a mentor figure, and he supported in Harry's journey.
Drashti, my question is how the character of Harry goes through the archetype of the different stages of the journey of the hero.
Yes. So, like as I also mentioned in my presentation, that Harry goes through the different kind of archetypes. Like first is hero archetype, and also after that hero archetype, he faces this shadow archetype, as you also mentioned in your PPTs. Like this kind of he has felt like he don't have this somebody with him, and also this kind of characteristics of archetype he has in his character, and also his throughout his journey he symbolizes so many archetypal symbols throughout his journey, and also in his books, or we can say, or in this series of Harry Potter, we can find so many symbols and so many archetypal symbols which Harry has. So I hope you are satisfied with my answer. Thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. Today is the fourth day of our presentation, semester two, and my presentation topic name is applying Rus theory on the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. Here is my personal information. Points to ponder upon: introduction of Rus theory, definition of Rus, applying Rus theory on the situation in the movie, conclusion, and then citation. Introduction of Rus theory. Here is a definition in Sanskrit. Tatra vibhavanubhava, tatra vibhavanubhava vyabhichari sanyoga drasa nishpatti. Here is a translation of definition. The theory of Rus is formulated by Bharat and later explicated and enriched by Anandvardhan and Abhinav Gupta. The genetic perspective of the theory of Rus looks at how both objective things in art and our own personal experience and emotions affect how we feel and think about an artwork. By understanding how these things work together, we can better understand and appreciate the emotional and intellectual effects of the artwork, and learn more about the culture and history that influenced it. The concept of Rus is unique to the arts and distinct from other major forms of human experience, such as the moral and intellectual or everyday practical problems. Aesthetic experience arise in a different way than these other forms of experience. The Indian theory of Rus emphasize both the nature and genesis of aesthetic experience, as well as the essential relationship between those who created and those who contemplate work of art. The theory of Rus accounts for the deeply satisfying character of aesthetic experience and how it relates to both private and communal life, as well as really in general. To understand this theory, we can approach it from three perspectives: genetic, phenomenological, and metaphysical. The genetic perspective outlines how Rus arise from a configuration of objective factors and their interplay with subjective ones. Here is some information of Rus. Types of Rus: Shringar Rus, Hasya Rus, Karun Rus, Rodra Rus, Veer Rus, Bhayanak Rus, Bibhatsa Rus, and uh, Adbhut Rus. This Shringar Rus, this Rus refers to the emotion of romantic or erotic love, which is usually depicted through various art forms such as poetry, dance, music, and painting. Hasya Hasya refers to the emotion of humor or comedy, which is commonly used in literature, theater, and film to create a light-hearted and entertaining experience for the audience. Karun refers to the emotion of compassion of sadness, which is often depicted through the tragic stories or artwork that evokes feelings of empathy and sympathy. Rodra refers to the emotion of anger or fury, which is often depicted through story or of revenge, war, or injustice, and is used to create a sense of tension and drama. Veera refers to the emotion of heroism or courage, which is often depicted through heroic tales or artwork that celebrates bravery, sacrifice, and triumph over adversity. Bhayanak refers to the emotion of fear or terror, which is commonly used in horror stories or artwork that aims to scare or unsettle the audience. Bibhatsa refers to the emotion of disgust or a revolution, which is often used in satire, God's art or social commentary or highlight society or culture issue. Adbhut refers to the emotion of wonder or amazement, which is often used in spiritual or religious art or in depiction of natural wonders to evoke a sense of awe and inspiration. Applying Rust theory on this on the movie Bollywood movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. Shringaras in the movie. Shringar means a love. Love is a dominant rus in the movie as it drives the plot and is depicted through various character and relationship. The romantic love between Rahul and Anjali, as well as the familial love between the family members, evokes the Shringaras. We can see in this Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham movie, the main theme of the movie is love and family. Hasyaras. In this movie, the character is Pooja. Humor is used to lighten the mood in several sense in the movie. For example, the comedic character of Pooh means Pooja, played by Kareena Kapoor, provides comic relief throughout the movie. Sometimes in the movie, Kajal also do some comedic dialogue. I forgot that the movie character of the movie is Yashvardhan Raichan, his wife Nandini Raichan, his elder son is Rahul Raichan, and his second son is Rohit Raichan, and Kajol as Anjali Sharma, and Poo means Pooja as Poo who play role of Kareena Kapoor who played a role of Pooja. Here is one video of Kajol who tries to play a comic in this movie. Here we can see the misunderstanding create a comic in this movie. The movie is directed by Karan Johar. The second is Karun Ras. As I already mentioned, the main theme of this movie is love and family. So this is a Bollywood movie. So of course, in this major Bollywood movie, we can see Karun Ras. When Kajol and Rahul, Yashwardhan's elder son Rahul, get married, his father Yashwardhan don't accept them, and he kicked out his son of his home. Compassion is a significant rust in the movie as it is depicted through the relationship between the family members. The movie portrays the importance of empathy and compassion in maintaining strong family bonds in the film. When Rahul, as I mentioned, when Rahul and Ranjali get married and Rahul's father does not accept them and throws him out of the house, and compassion arise. Next is Rodra Ras. This Rodra Ras creates in movie when his young son Rohit know that his father throw out his elder son to home. Uh, Anger is evoked in the movie through Rohan's anger toward his father, Yashwardhan Raichand, and his decision to leave the family, and he leaves his family. Uh, uh, other Next is Veer Ras. Here is a main role of, and we can say a protagonist of the movie is Rahul. He is like a hero. Heroism is present in the film, especially through the character of Rahul, who is a portrayal as a larger than life hero. His sacrificing attitude and determination to keep his family together evoke the Veeras. Uh, uh, if you see in the movie the first entry of SRK, we can see the entry like a hero in a helicopter and the big villa, the Adbhut Ras. This Ras is according to my understanding. When we see the villa of Yashwardhan Raichand and his under furniture and home, we can see the very lavish family belongs to them. Wonder is evoked through the grand and lavish sets and customs in the movie. The movie's use of stunning visual and extravagant sets evoke the Adbhut Ras. To conclude, the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. Sorry, I forgot. Three Ras, Bibhatsya Ras, uh, Bibhatsya Ras, and Bibhatsya Ras and Shant Ras. This is not a prominent Ras in the movie because they are not situation not match in this movie. So I don't take it. Conclusion: the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham effectively used different types of ras to convey a range of emotional states and themes, including love, humor, compassion, heroism, wonder, and peace. The movie is successful in creating a powerful emotional impact and has continued to be popular due to its use of Rus theory. This means that the film's ability to convey different emotions and themes, such as love, humor, and compassion, has made it a captivating and enjoyable movie experience. Overall, the effective use of Rus theory has contributed to the movie success and popularity. I give a prompt to ChatGPT. Can we make a presentation to apply Rus theory in the movie? So the ChatGPT give me a very good answer, and ChatGPT gives what I should do to make a presentation on any movie. Which steps I should follow to get a best presentation. And the chat gpt also gave me good information about ras bhav and vibhav and other things. Work citation. If anyone have any question, they can ask.
Bhavyata, what culture or social factors may influence the audience's emotional response to Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham when analyzed through the lens of Ras theory?
As we all know that Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham is a Bollywood Bollywood movie made for a specific audience with Indian cultural and social factors in mind. The audience's emotion response to the film may be influenced by these factors, including family values, love, marriage, relationship with each other character, music, dance, and colors. Understanding the cultural and social contents in which the movie was created and received in importance when analyze the audience's emotional response through the lens of Rus theory. Anyone?
Bhavyata, my question is that, as you mentioned in your slides also, that it has 8 rasa, as you said. How does rasa theory contribute to the emotional impact of Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham?
Rus theory contributes the emotional impact on the Bollywood movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham by enhancing the theme of love, family, heroism, and wonder thought. The use of various types in rasa, as I already mentioned in my slide. Thank you. Very good evening to you all. I'm Jani, and today, on the second last day of presentation season, I'm going to discuss about the topic Shakespearean Rasa theory, tragedies. Here is the roadmap of my presentation. Rasa theory, Rus theory in Shakespearean tragedies, Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, conclusion, and ChatGPT's presentation. Before moving to the Rus in Shakespearean tragedy, it is necessary to know about the definition, which is given by Acharya Bharat Muni. Tatra vibhavanu vyabhichari sanyogat ras nishpatti, which means the sentiment is produced ras nishpatti from combination samyoga of determinants vibhav, consequence anubhav, and complementary psychological states vyabhichari bhav. The literal meaning of the Sanskrit word rasa is juice or essence. I agree with the very argument of Acharya Bharat Muni, and I believe that ras works like spices in any art forms. Aristotle defines tragedy in Book 4 as an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude, in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. I personally believe that in Aristotle's definition, artistic ornaments defines ras, as per my point of view. However, in Indian aesthetics, rasa refers to the emotional essence or flavor that is evoked in the audience through the artistic expression. It is the emotional or aesthetic experience that the audience feels while experiencing a work of art. Ras is considered to be the ultimate goal of any artistic expression in Indian aesthetics, as it seeks to create an emotional connection between the performer and the audience. Rus theory in Shakespearean tragedies. The theories of Indian aesthetics have a universal applicability that enables a thorough examination of Western text. Furthermore, the vastness of Shakespeare's work present ample opportunity of an in-depth analysis utilizing the concept of Indian aesthetics. As per A.C. Bradley, the four tragedies, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth, are four principal tragedies. And I feel Shakespearean characters like Macbeth or Othello, Hamlet, is an upright man and his suffering as a hero enjoys a much higher degree of empathy from the audience. Hamlet, the Rasa theory in Hamlet. In case of Hamlet, the protagonist occupies a central position in the generation of emotions. As it can be seen later, with a few exceptions, the whole emotional process of a viewer revolves around Hamlet. In the very first scene of Act 1, the opening scene of the play arouses a feeling of wonder at the Bhutaras and then strikes fear, Bhayanakaras, in the audience at the mention of the apparition. Touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. Therefore, I have entered him along with us to watch the minutes of the night, that if again this apparition come, the feelings of fear and wonder are intensified at the appearance of the ghost. Horatio, it harrows me with a fear and wonder. The experience of wonder and fear cannot exist as they are opposing emotions. In case the feeling of fear or bhayanak ras takes over, however, alongside wonder, there is a subtle sense of bravery or heroism. Veer ras felt upon seeing the ghost, who appears in the form of a deceased king dressed in his noble armor. Here is some dialogue. Here is the statement that the experience of wonder and fear cannot coexist. But in Shakespeare's work, there are many exceptions, and he put that experience very wonderfully. And personally, I believe that Hamlet is a very weird, that he is very close to the ghost of his father, as we all are not normally very familiar with ghost, and Hamlet is playing very safely with the ghost. The secondary emotions of doubt, subsession, and apprehension, also known as the Vyabhichari Bhav, arise alongside the primary emotion of fear or bhayanak ras. They serve to support and enhance the feeling of fear. Horatio. This bodes some strange eruption to our state. Bernardo. How now, Horatio? You tremble and look pale. In the second scene of the play, Hamlet inherent suspicion, Claudius and his strong aversion of Jugupsi Bhava towards his mother's hasty marriage with her brother in law are apparent. Hamlet refers to their union as an incest. The scene effectively portrays the magnitude of his revulsion as demonstrated in the following lines. Hamlet, Frailty, thy name is woman. Here is the very famous dialogue of Hamlet about his mother. Overall, Hamlet is a rich and complex work that can be analyzed through the lens of Rasa theory. By exploring the different emotional states that the play evokes in the audience, we can gain deeper understanding of its theme, characters, and enduring appeal. Othello, as McHarren considers Othello as the tragedy of love, written by Shakespeare. The tragedy of Othello is attributed to the existence of a malevolent antagonist. Rudra Ras is dominant in the play. When Othello feels that his wife is unfaithful, the Rudra Ras is aroused. The conduct of Iago is wicked, as evident from the profane and foul language he has used in his dialogues throughout the play. Such language contributes the expression of a bibitsaras, which is characterized by the feeling of disgust that dominates the play's emotional tone. Othello loved his wife so much, but when he assumed that she is unfaithful, he became furious and at last kills her. He says, I killed thee ere I killed thee. No way but this killing myself to die upon a kiss. By this action, Othello is destroying himself. He lost a faithful wife. He lost the person he loved most in the world. According to Bharata, pity and fear are two major emotions that a tragedy should evoke. This sentence of Bharata is a very similar to the definition of Aristotle, in which he also considers pity and fear as two major emotions that a tragedy should evoke. In Act 1, Scene 3, Othello describes how he won Desdemona's love. She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. This line in Othello emphasizes the Shringar and Karun Ras together. Uh, I want to mention the Ravji Patel's poem here, Aakhe Kankuna Suraj Athamya. That is also very similar to this, as Shringar and Karun Ras both came together. This is Shakespeare, and he can do anything. Like, look at the Othello. That one side is Desdemona, and one side is Iago. Iago is not very familiar, and he is not very close to Othello. And on the other hand, there is Desdemona, who is beloved of Othello, and she fought against her father to marry Othello. So he believes Iago rather than Desdemona, and he kills Desdemona, and he before killing her, he is a very in he recalls the memory that he has spent with Desdemona, and and he calls her as her beloved and love of her life, of his life. And this is how Shringar and Karun Rasa both came together in Shakespeare's work of Othello. Macbeth. The initial scene of the play evokes a sense of marvel, Adbhut Ras, that quickly transforms into apprehension, Bhayanak Ras, upon the introduction of the three Aries sisters, Alambana Vibhav, gathering on a bleak and tempestuous heath, Udipan Bhab, to discuss their next meeting. The witches in incension heighten the feeling of fear and wonder. Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and fill the air. Shakespeare evokes the feeling of fear and wonder together. It is very like tickling. We are feeling very fear. We are feeling fear, and still we want to see what is happening next. So this is how he is using the fear and wonder through the characters of the three witches. And three witches are a very significant characters in Macbeth, and they are evoking these emotions. The feeling of fear overtakes a wonder as a result of enigmatic final statements made by the witches. Alongside fear, there is a subtle hint of heroism, Veerarasa, that arises when Malcolm praises the wounded captain who fought bravely in the battle. Through his recollection, Smriti, of events, the captain highlights Macbeth's accomplishments, like Valor's minion craved out his passage till he faced the slave. Macbeth is presented as an outstandingly talented fighter with a fierce desire to win generating Veer Ras. As the scene 2 opens, Macbeth does not think it to be necessary to share the plot against Banquo, and flees with her and starts conjuring up the powers of darkness, simulating Bhayanak Ras in the reader. At the beginning of scene 4, Macbeth is filled with horror and fear upon seeing Banquo's apparition covered in blood. which appears to be invisible to others. This sequence of events evokes a sense of wonder, adbhut ras in the reader, which is quickly replaced by feeling of apprehension. Bhayanak Ras. When we know that Macbeth has killed Banco, and in the very next scene there is a Banco, and when we first look at that scene, there is a Banco, and we feel very wonder that how is that possible? And when we come to know next that he is dead, and Macbeth is talking to the ghost of Banco, then we feel very bhayanak. We will evoke the bhayanak ras. In the uh, in the scene too, Lady Macduff displays genuine feelings of anger, स्थायी भाव of क्रोध and fear, bhai, as she questions her husband's sudden departure to England and abandonment of his family. Her fury is intervened with the स्थायी भाव of Stoke, and her deep love for her husband is also apparent. Lady Macduff's sorrowful state stimulates the Karundras in the readers, accompanied by the Vyabhicharins and sadness and repulsion, Nirved. However, the light-hearted battle of her son elicits Hasyaras. We can see that a lot of things that is going on in background, that Lady Macbeth is furious and sad because of the loss of her husband, and she is furious, and at the very same time her son evokes a very funny fun in the play. Lady Macduff, how God help thee, poor monkey, but how wilt thou do for a father? Son, if he were dead, you would have wept for him. If you would not, it were a good sign that I should quickly have a new father. Look at the very line, that how deep is this line, that if she is not crying, that means that she might love another man. Her son questions that if you are not weeping, you are not crying, then I will surely have a new father right now. So this is how Shakespeare puts the irony and fun, and also the furiousness of Lady Macduff, simulating the secondary emotional state, Vyabhichar Bhav of insensibility or stupor, Jhadta, and recollection, Smriti. Seiton Ray enters to inform him about the death of Lady Macbeth, with most famous speech of Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Macbeth. In short, Macbeth is filled with a string of emotions: Vismaya and Jugupsa, Shringar, Hasya, Veer, and Karuna. But it is the dominant emotion, Sthai Bhav of Bhaya, fear, that reigns supreme throughout the play. We can see that Macbeth is full of these all the rust, and it creates a very good impact on us when we look deep upon the Macbeth. Then it is a very good play, and it is very addictive play, I guess. Conclusion. In conclusion, the study of Shakespeare's tragedies through the lens of Rasa theory offers a fascinating insight into the emotional impact of his plays on the audience. The interplay of various ras, Sthayi Bhav, and Vyabhicharins in the characters and events portrayed in his tragedies creates a complex and nuanced emotional experience for the audience. From the initial feeling of wonder to the ultimate sense of tragedy, Shakespeare's work continued to evoke powerful emotional response in readers and audience alike. The application of rasa theory to Shakespeare's plays highlights the enduring appeal to his works and their ability to engage and move audience across cultures and time periods. Here are my works cited. And here is the prompt when here is the presentation which is made by ChatGPT when I gave prompt that make a presentation on dress in the Shakespearean tragedies. So the chat gpt made this presentation, but it presented in a very general sense. As per my opinion, as a human, I have a very many questions when I start reading about my topic. Then I get a question by reading more and more. So it is a very limited information which is given by chat gpt. And when human makes research, then they may refer to the many points, and they came to know many different things. And this is a very limited information which is given by chat gpt. Thank you. Is there any question?
Avani, my question is that are there any potential limitation of Rasa theory to Shakespeare's play?
As per my opinion, I'm a student of English literature. That's why I may not find any differences with Rasa theory in Shakespeare's play. But there are some limitations about, for example, there is limitation of culture. The culture is very different. It is the term the Rus is a very Indian term, and the Shakespeare play is not Indian play, and that's why there are some differences. And many critics also believes that Rus is not for every play. It's not every play or everyone that. I may see something or which is very funny, but I don't feel funny, and that's why I don't like the. So that's why there is a, if there is a emotion of a fear, then I if I don't feel, then it is not appealing to me. So this is how it works.
Only my question is for you that, in your opinion, which Rus in Indian aesthetic does Shakespeare predominantly evoke in his tragedies?
As per my opinion, in Macbeth, Hamlet, and Othello, I think that Shakespeare has used the ras of Bhayanak ras, Karun ras, and Shringar ras, very little Shringar ras, but still there is. So I believe that Karun ras is the more prominent in the works of Shakespeare's, and I think that Shakespearean tragedies deals most prominently with with the ras of Karun. That's it. Thank you.
Good noon to all. Today is the fourth day of our season 2 presentation, and today I have present my topic on the two uses of language in I. A. Richard's practical criticism. This is my personal information. Introduction. I.A. Richards, in full named Ivor Armstrong Richards, he was born in 1893 and died in 1979 in England. Richards was an English critic, poet, and teacher who was highly influential in developing a new way of reading poetry that led to the new criticism and that also influenced some forms of reader response criticism. He was a founder of a new criticism. Richards was educated at Magdalen College, Cambridge. He was a lecturer in English and moral sciences there from 1922 to 1929. In that period, he wrote three of his most influential books: The Meaning of Meaning, in 1923, a pioneer work on semantics and principles of literary criticism in 1924, and practical criticism 1929, companion volumes that he used to develop his critical method. I- Ivor Armstrong Richards was a modern writer of a 20th century. His speculative and theoretical works include Science and Poetry in 1926, revised as Poetry and Sciences, Menses on the Mind, Coleridge on Imagination, The Philosophy of Rhetoric, Speculative Instruments Beyond Poetries and Complementaries. His verse has been collected in internal colloquies and news and selected poems. Two uses of language. The two uses of language is written in Ivor Armstrong Richards in his practical criticism. The two uses of language is the first one is a scientific use and the second one is emotive use. There are we simply to use for language to communicate. There are for Richards two kinds of belief, namely scientific and emotive beliefs. He defines scientific belief as readiness to act as true, the reference symbolized by the preposition which is believed were true. It is clear definition for science belief advance by Richards covers all five types which I have suggested, namely the logico-mathematical, the scientific, the metaphysical, the ethical and aesthetic, and the theological. The scientific language is the language of science, included chemistry, physics, maths, and the and the symbol like used sigma, alpha, sigma and delta. Richard's scientific belief corresponds to and is pertinent of his scientific use of language. That is, when a statement is made for the sake of the reference it causes, the proper responses in terms of belief is a scientific belief. If you use language scientifically, for example, if you say war is strong, and my belief with respect to this statement is a scientific belief. The the scientific the scientific language is the faithfully recalled to the object. The emotive use of language, there is a emotive belief or emotional belief, as Richards call it in his PC. He holds that the difference between these emotive beliefs and scientific beliefs is not one degree but of kind. The emotive language is the emotive language of the poet, literature, and inner coherence. And the emotive language is the word evokes emotion. Richards maintains that Emotive beliefs have nothing to do with the truth or falsity of the statements emotively believed. They are held because they are instrumental in bringing about certain desirable state of affairs, certain attitudes and emotional responses, certain imaginative satisfactions. There are two groups of emotive beliefs. The first is a general belief, an example of which in Aristotelian terminology would be how a person of a certain character would speak to act probably or necessarily. In emotive language, it is a depend on the situation because it is a maybe true, it is maybe true or false. The second is similar to Coleridge's willing suspension of disbelief and what David Parker refers to as a make belief. Richards was trying to make distinctions between actualities and feelings of actually in order to clear up a discursive misunderstanding. And his famous distinction, psychological, it should be noted, not substantive between scientific and emotive uses of language, which asserts that prose or scientific discourse is contributed by factual statements, while poetry is constituted by pseudo statements. Emotive uses of language it included like literature and art. Richards was simply providing a way of designating then two distinct psychological relationships which may be assumed by an author or a reader toward a language that passes them. As Richard Foster believed that to be interested is to try to obtain a cognizance to do what Mr. Richards wickedly denies to poetic, expressive, and grants exclusively to science to seek the truth. The philosophy of rhetoric, for example, adumbrated a new science of language to correspond with how we actually use it. An intention iterated in the recent speculative instruments, where one essay urges a united studio at once more scientifically and more humanly conceived and scientific use when we use language is used for scientific purposes and it is a matter of fact and requires undistorted references and absence of fictions. Emotional belief is all that is appropriate given a need in the organism and imbalance, mental or physical, a tendency to survive toward equilibrium, and idea, no matter what the extent to which intellectual rejection takes place, any idea which can be taken as a step to its fulfillment is accepted. Emotional belief for Richards is this acceptance, this use of idea by our interest, desires, feelings, and attitudes. Richards would classify as an emotional belief one which, according to him, is distinctly different from a scientific belief. An example of such a belief would be a man will kill his wife if she provokes him into an extreme state of jealousy. An example of when we watch the play Macbeth, there were a terrible character like Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and uh, and uh, ki- and the killing of Duncan is the killing of Duncan is there were like emotive emotive language used there were. Richards would be right in this assertion, but this fact doesn't make the Aristotelian type of statement an emotional belief. We find ourselves holding such beliefs in real life and also in works of art. Manuel Bilski point of view that Richards makes mistake because he fails to draw the important distinction between truth in the sense of what can be verified by certain specific facts, data, etc., and truth in the sense to which John Hospers, for example, attaches so much significance. Hospers calls this type of truth to works or art are true to human nature, human emotions. These are certainly truths, not the truths of physics or of chemistry or history, but the truths of psychology, and therefore it seems to Manuel Bilski entitled to intellectual status, just as reading as the other types of truths which Richards admits to this category. Here I asked the question to ChatGPT, and it gave me the answer is and the answer is very relevant to my topic. And ChatGPT you used to us. This is my work cited. Thank you.
Anjali, is it possible for someone to use both languages of higher literacy simultaneously? How can a person use two languages simultaneously?
Yes, the the uses of both languages of Richards it uses of language in simultaneously like the emotive language is true or false, and it is dependent on the situation, and other side scientific language, there were use of scientific languages use the references should be logical. So both languages of I. Richard simultaneously uses.
Anjali, my question is, can the two uses of language be applied to other forms of art, such as visual art or music?
Okay. The two uses of language we can apply in such as visual art or music. Visual art and music, it is a indicator or literature, and emotive language is a part of language and literature, and also art. So we also uses the uses of language like visual art or music in emotive language. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Aarti Sarvaya. Today I am going to deal with this topic Vakrokti Siddhant by Kuntaka. This is my personal information. Table of content, introduction, about Vakrokti, types of Vakrokti, conclusion, and then references. Introduction. Indian aesthetics is a unique philosophical and spiritual point of view on art, architecture, and literature. In Indian poetics, different theoreticians and schools differs as to what the soul or essence of poetry is. They have used the word Atman, which stands for essence or life spirit, as opposed to physical body. Here are eight schools of uh, uh, Indian poetics, which who evokes these schools in ninth century. The Alamkara school, which is coined by Parmar, Dhvani school, which is coined by Anandvardhana, Vakrokti school, which is coined by Kuntaka, Ras and Gun and Dosh school, Auchitya theory, which is coined by Shemendra, Rasa school, which is coined by Bharata, and Anumana school, and then Riti school. Here are some references which I have taken from ChatGPT. This is a very relevant and very useful and easy to understandable content which I got from ChatGPT, which is like Alankar. Alankar is refers to the use of literary devices or figures of speech in poetry, such as simile, metaphor, personification, and irony. Dhvani. Dhvani refers to the power of suggestion or resonance that a poem can evoke in the mind of the reader or listeners, often through the use of symbolism, metaphor, or other literary techniques. Vakrokti. Vakrokti refers to the use of indirect and oblique expressions in poetry, often used to create a sense of mystery or a complexity in the meaning of the poem. Gun and dosha, which is refers to the positive and negative qualities of a work of poetry, including its strength and weakness. This includes aspects such as use of language, structure, style, and the effectiveness of work in conveying the intended meaning. Auchitya. Auchitya refers to the idea of appropriateness, of suitability in poetry. It encompasses the various considerations that a poet must take into account when creating a work of poetry, including the context, the intended audience, and the purpose of work. Ras refers to the emotions and aesthetic experiences that a reader or a listener has when engaging work with art and particular poetry. Riti refers to the style or mode of expression used in poetry, including the use of language, grammar, and syntax. Um, uh, and Anumana theory, which refers to the process of interference or logical reasoning, is not traditionally considered as a part of Indian poetics. Rather, it is a concept that is more closely associated with Indian philosophy and logic. About Vakrokti. Vakrokti is a remarkable school of poetics in Sanskrit. It is the theory of language of literature. It means an oblique utterance or a markedness of language. Kuntaka is a pioneer of this school who made Vakrokti a full-fledged theory of literary name. He mentions Vakrokti theory in his work Vakrokti Jivita. He defines Vakrokti as both word and meaning marked by artistic turn of speech in his book Vakrokti Jivita. Vakrokti means vakra, oblique, and ukti means a statement or utterance, but in fact it is a divine or marked expression. It can also mean special denotation. Mm. This is one shlok which I heard from Vinod Joshi sir. That शब्दार्थो सहितो वक्र कवि व्यापार शालिनी बंधे व्यवस्थितो काव्यम तद्विदाह्लाद कारिणी means a person who knows kavya, who only can enjoy the aesthetic pleasure of work or a poem. Types of Vakrukti. Uh, f- uh, First is Varna Vinyas, Pad Purvarth, Pararth, Vakya Vakrata, uh, Prakaran Vakrata, and Prabandh Vakrata. According to Kuntaka, there are 6 types of Vakrata which I mentioned here. First is Varna Vinyas Vakrata. Varna Vinyas Vakrata, it represents the aesthetic pleasure of a word. For example, now Kanchalotion, Kanchamukh par Pad Kancharunam. In this poem or prayer, we can find the one word which is come repeatedly and which gives us aesthetic pleasure. Second is Pad Purvartha Vakrata. In this Vakrata, we have an preposition which gives the full meaning of full sentence. For example, in this sentence, the word tame is if we hide that, we cannot get the idea, or we cannot even understand the meaning. What is the meaning of this? And this word tame is represent all over the sentence, main idea or full meaning of the sentence. Third one is Parartha Vakrata. This In this Vakrata, the word is same, but the suffix which is with the word, it can changes the whole meaning of the sentence. And for example, in this Ramesh Parak's work, I got these 2 lines from that, in which the word gadhne and then second line gadma, both gad is the similar word, but the suffix which is connected with them, it gives the very different meaning of the sentence. And then Vakya Vakrata. In this Vakrata, we can also say that when a person gives or made taunt or that kind of language, we can use in this Vakrata. Fifth is Prakaran Vakrata. In this Vakrata, a writer takes reference or a particular part of some literary works and made his or her own works. For example, Kavi Botadkar rachit Urmila Mahakavya, and which is taken from Ramayana, and Kant rachit Abhignan Kavya, which is taken from Mahabharata. And we also very well known one another example which we learned from our primary schooling there, that is the Ravanu Mithyabhiman, in which we also find that also taken from Ramayana. It is also a part of Ramayana, but it is represented in a new form, and new writer is also there. And sixth one is Prabandh Vakrata. In this Vakrata, a story or a whole work give a message or a message at the end of the story or play. For example, throughout the Ramayana, we can get the idea that we can get the message that Satya par Asatya par Satya no Vijay. And in from Hamlet, we also can get the message that destiny is almighty, and we can consider all the Panchatantra and Panchatantra stories as Prabandh Vakrata. Conclusion. According to Kantaka, Vakrukti is striking mode of speech born out of poetic proficiency. This means that it is a poetic element which produces a superwordly charm. Kuntaka said that the six kind of Vakruktis describes upon together individually create a poetic brilliance. Vakrukti theory is a useful framework for stylistic analysis of literature. Kuntaka, in fact, incorporates Ras, Alamkar, Riti, and Guna theories into this theory of Vakrata. What is called Dhvani by Anand Vardhana is a termed Vakrukti by Kuntaka. He declares that Vakrukti is a soul of poetry. These are my references. Then thank you. Now you have one question, then you can ask me.
Aarti, what is the significance? Aarti, what is the significance of the Vakrukti Siddhanta in the study of world literature and comparative literature?
Vakrukti is through Vakrukti we can give the complex and complex meaning and very meaning in literature. We can also find that someone is not directly says that something, and we can indirectly said that in through the Vakrukti.
How does the use of Vakrukti contribute to the overall appeal of Indian aesthetics?
In Indian aesthetic, Vakrukti present a vital role because in other Indian aesthetics like Ras and Alankar, they are directly says what they want to say, but in Vakrukti we can get the complex meaning and very deep meaning of word, and so thank you.
So, hi, yes, you can go. You have prepared good slides. Good examples were also given from the lectures. That examples were taken. That is good. And slide design also was good. Yours and Hina also had a good design. Okay, so that was a good. Now, in two presentations, we can see this that when you use some of the lines from some articles, at that time, that article perhaps is trying to prove that line. But are you also using to prove that line or not? That you have to see. For example, in Hina's presentation, there was this organ was cited, Hindu India, that is pre-Muslim India, that's how he says. And then he says, so, but that was not at all something to be proven at the end of the presentation. So why that line is selected? That you have to be careful. That first lines of those articles are something that they try to prove subsequently, and they bring as a conclusion also. So are you also bringing that as a conclusion? This was in another, also I think we will see that. So that you have to see. So paragraphs or lines that you take from the articles, are they trying to prove that, but what are you doing with that? And your some of this were very good, some sources that you have used. For example, this was good, K. Krishnamurthy's Dhvani or suggestion, a study in perspective. So this is a good article which can be referred. In English, if you want something more, it is in Indian literature. So it is quite a renowned journal also. Sahitya Akademi's journal. This also was good, Indian Aesthetics, Its Techniques and Assumptions by Troy Organ. This is a very good article where he is referring to this Hindu India, this idea which is a bit problematic, but the article is good where he referred to Kala in different forms in Indian context. So this also was a good source that you have used. Then many of you, when your primary text, you have to be careful in citing. Primary text, like if it is Bharat Muni, then that text, Dhvanyalok, then whose work. So those are rarely cited, the seminal works. If it is I. Richards, then you have to cite practical criticisms from where figurative language is coming. So that is the main text, your main that is what you have to cite. So you come to know when is it published, where is it published, you try to search there. That where is that original text? Is it available anywhere in Sanskrit language? If you are looking for Indian aesthetic, that also you are become aware of those resources. Hetal, Rod Not Taken. You are not given links, so I cannot check whether you have taken everything from any source or you have written in your own way. So those links were not given to open and find the resources. Chat GPT responses were good in your context. You're able to find appropriate responses. The citation you need to check out. Gopi on this Alamkara. Now again, you are citing one from Scribed. That also is problematic. Yes. And another one, Google Books also. That also we have said several times that how to cite. So still the same mistake is repeated. We have already said earlier how to work with Google Book citations. Ghanshyam also prepared good slides as per the theme, shadow and the persona. Jungian, you have to say that Jungian concept of Carl Jung's Jungian concept of shadow and persona, an archetypal study. Carl Jung should be cited because that idea comes. His essay, he has written, this work is published in 1953 as 2 essays on analytical psychology. That is the title where this idea about persona, Carl Jung is giving, 1953. So that is seminal from where the original idea came, which subsequently other people used. Also there is a word ox for that, ox, AKS, and there is a film also, Ox, that also deals with the same idea also. Good examples. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde also is a good archetype for that example. Gayatri has cited Northrop Frye. So seminal work, seminal from wherever all the ideas are coming. That is what you have to cite. So all those essays, 2-3 essays were cited. Examples might have been given. It was a good presentation, but some more examples, at least even from the text that you have studied so far in BA, MA, that can be added into Mythos. That how which text goes into which Mythos that you might have given. Drashti also presented well. That video clip was good to see, that how in a few words you make your point, which for lots of things we do, but we can't make a point. So he very clearly gave 2-3 points that how you see archetype. So there is a hero who is orphan and lives with uncles and aunts, and then he is gifted, but he is not aware. So how very quickly you find, and then you find, oh, this is this text, but then you see that, well, it's not only Harry Potter, it is Star Wars also, it is Spider-Man also, it is Lion King also, it is Jungle Book also. So many books, so many work of art will fix into that pattern. So you have very quickly understood what is archetype, and how so many literature drops into, easily dropping into those spaces. You have a terrible villain there, a terrible bad person, and to win over that alone you can't do. So you'll have to make a team, fellowship, togetherness. So that is all these stories are about this only, nothing else. So within 3 lines he has summed up that what is archetype and how one can read that. You should have cited Frye also, that was not there. Okay. Then Bhavyata also good attempt to read this. You referred to S.K. Saxena's article. In the very second slide you referred to this genetic phenomenology, metaphysical idea of looking at Rasa theory. But there it was not cited. There you have to clearly mention that as S.K. Saxena in so-and-so article tries to say about this. And yes, yours also the same case like Hina, that are you proving genetic phenomenology, metaphysical aspect in this film or not? That was not found. So then after giving that in first slide, it was lost. There was nothing about that. So why was it used in the initial slide? So the way you begin at the end, after giving example, you prove that. So this is how genetic phenomenology or metaphysical is found in this film. Plan of presentation you found from ChatGPT, that steps were given. Okay. And this also, love is normally Shringar Ras. Love is a bow, Rati, is translated as love. So love is not Ras, Shringar Ras. You have to see, and then that is the bow, Rati bow, normally the word that is used. And Indian culture reference you have given, that was good, from where that Saxena's article was there. Those images you should put proper images and screenshots rather than the photos which are taken are not proper.
So I put this laptop's history. So then
but from laptop also you can take screenshot. Laptop you can take. You have to just ask Google how to take screenshot in laptop. Google will tell you. No need to ask anybody. It will copy, and in PPT you can paste the image, and then from PPT you generate JPG file. And okay, this too, and then Avani's also was good on Shakespearean tragedies. There is a very interesting work that you have cited, but that work gives a very good idea to apply Rasa theory and how one can look at this. That book is Koshi's book. Swapna Koshi, this book, wherein there are very interesting chapters and a very good work this is. So chapter 1, universality of, so first you are trying to prove that how this Indian aesthetic theories has universal appeal, which can be applied. That also you have to prove by comparing and doing analysis. Then concept of Rasa is given, then Hamlet. Now see the subtitles that are given to this. Jugupsa intensifying Karuna. So Jugupsa intensifying Karuna, that is Hamlet. Then Othello. Uttam Prakriti transformed by Shanka to Adam Prakriti. So this is when you try, then you are actually applying the words and reading. So in one line you have put the entire character through the lens of Rasa theory. When you say this, Uttam Prakriti transformed by Shanka to Adam Prakriti. King Lear, redeemed from Rodra to Shant. Macbeth, Bhay unfolding Karuna. So this, and then the analysis, if you see, even if you read just abstract, you find very interesting way that they are applying that how, what is dominant Ras, that also they say there is one is a dominant Ras which drives all other Ras also. For example, in Hamlet, you say this, then there is a dynamic interplay of Ras that gives aesthetic vitality to the play. Though Karuna had been identified as Pradhan Ras. So that was, there is one is a Pradhan and all other Ras drives towards that. So even when you apply in a film, what is Pradhan Ras? And how all other Ras like comedy or Shringar, how they add, they are small rivulets. They merge into big river and then they go into the ocean. So that connection we have to read. Everything is not aloof, separate, but they add. So each and every Ras when we talk about in any text, how they adds to the Pradhan Ras and then to overall effect of other. If that connection is made, then it is a good study. Otherwise, separately, everywhere Ras will be found. Separately, everywhere. There cannot be anything without Ras. Everywhere it will be. So like the idea that was given in this book also, Bharat Muni, that it is compared with metaphorically with the dish. Like we have this Gujarati thali or Indian thali is always of lots of variety. And you find all kinds of Ras. Tikho, Turo, Khato, Mitho, બધું જ સાથે આવે, એક સાથે. So it is not one after another. So everything is served together. So you, and all Ras adds with each other. આપણે કોઈ એક પ્રકારના રસ વાળી વસ્તુ ખાય ને પછી બીજા પ્રકારની ખાય, એ શું ખાઈએ છે? તો એ પણ એમાંથી આવે કે એમ જ શું કામ ખાઈએ આપણે, એ જ રસ એ રીતે. તો એ બધા જ રસ બરાબર જો પેટમાં ગયા હોય તો આપણને તૃપ્તિનો ઓડકાર આવે કે આજે ખાવાની બહુ મજા આવી, કારણ કે વેરાયટી ઓફ થિંગ્સ બધું હતું. એકાદ બે વસ્તુ હોય તો થોડી ભૂખ રહી જાય બાકી. So that is the metaphor which is used that with the thali idea. So everything should go together, and this book is good. Swapna Kosh's book. And also good that your parents and your relatives or others were also watching. So that is good that they are also taking interest in how you are performing, which should be by others also. You also should tell your parents that you should also watch our turn, and then you can give comment also in that how was the things there. So they also can get involved into your academic activities. Anjali's was on I.A. Richards. Okay, so that was also prepared well. A few questions were not clearly or very well given, so that you need to look at that how you can still give better answers to the questions. Okay, so it's quite late today. We end our session here.